Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. Today, we have the founder of PodMatch with us, Alex Sanfilippo on the podcast. Did I say your last name right?
You sure did. Yep.
Oh, man. Yes. This is something I'll do is I'll rehearse a last name. Then when I have to say it live, I'm like, did I get it right or not? And
it's really rare, but you did. So congratulations. That's an early win for this episode.
All right. We're starting off with some fire. Awesome, man. So I'd love to jump in right off the bat with a powerful question. We're going to talk today podcast growth and how that leads to personal development in your life, faith and leadership, resilience, the entrepreneur journey, and being a server and a storyteller. And as the title of this episode goes, I love this topic of how podcasting can be this incredible tool for personal growth, for leadership, and it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. So for somebody who's the founder of one of the biggest podcast platforms in the world, Alex, I want to know for you, how has podcasting helped you grow personally, helped you grow as a leader?
Listen, as you said, Rob, this is a question that doesn't get talked about enough. So I'm really excited to jump into this. I'm just going to go into some of my backstory because it really kind of leads to how personal growth can happen through podcasting. I'm going to go back to my childhood. I'll make this pretty brief, everybody, but I do want to share when I was a kid, I was actually dyslexic. And I really struggled to learn to read and to write. And as a result, I also had trouble speaking. Like it just didn't come natural to me. And I ended up being a pretty quiet kid for the most part, even though like I now today would tell you, I'm like a big time extrovert. I love being around people. I talk really fast, really loud. But that just wasn't my reality back then. And listen, I'm just going to I'm a follower of Jesus. And I am thankful that like I was healed from that. Those scars remained for a long time. And throughout school, I really struggled, specifically in English and anything that had to do with speaking were like big struggle points for me. Now, so I was the quiet kid, dyslexic for a bit, right? Like really struggled. But I realized that there were so many things in my head when I became an adult and I started leading teams in organizations and actually doing a little bit of speaking that I didn't really know what I thought I knew. And what I mean by that is there was things in my head that were incomplete thoughts that when I started to try to speak them, I realized I don't actually know this very well. I've got an incomplete thought in my head. Like it's kind of there. I could probably get you to 90%, but who knows when you're teaching somebody or talking to a group of people and you can only get 90% of the information out, that last 10% is critical for someone else to connect the dots, including ourselves as speakers often. And so I struggled with that. So I was like, man, I was already kind of quiet as a kid. Like, I just need to make sure I only talk about exactly what I know, right? Like I can't stretch out of this. I can't seem to articulate my thoughts very well. And then one day I found podcast guesting of all things. So like I found podcasting through listening. Like I think most of us started off that way, right? Like I didn't just like discover it before I listened to a show, but I really, really liked the conversational flow. And so what do you know? I start going on podcast. I had a story that was interesting to people and some things I had overcome, some things I had been through. And I started learning to actually fully 100% articulate things that I thought I only kind of knew. It turns out like communicating them led me to the personal development that I needed to learn to articulate an entire thought really well. Now, again, going back to my childhood, these are probably scars that just kind of followed me all the way through. I just didn't develop the way that most people would, but this kind of completed that path for me. And so now here I was like going on shows and realizing that I'm actually growing by being on shows. My ability to communicate, my ability to tell a story, my ability to engage people and help other people actually level up in their own way through what I'm sharing was actually taking place. And for me, now I look back, it's like podcasting is like one of the primary growth tools in my life, both as a guest and as a host these days. But I'll tell you what, like I don't think there's anything that helped me move the needle faster or further than podcasting.
That is such a good point. The point of when we have an idea in our head, we think it's fully fleshed out, right? This happens so often. Like, oh, that's a great idea. And you carry it around. And until you try to say it out loud and articulate it, you're like, hold on a second. There's all these gaps and holes in it because your brain kind of like pieces things together without you being fully finished with it. And until you start talking about it, you're like, oh man, I thought I really knew this thing, but now I can't actually get the words that are in my head out of my mouth. The thoughts that are in here, I can't get them out. And similar to you, I was not dyslexic growing up, but I was very shy, very introverted. Really, the way I would describe it is I like had a version of me inside that I didn't know how to get out. And I unknowingly got into radio broadcasting at 15 years old because I had to figure this out, but I didn't know. God led me to it. I mean, I didn't necessarily know God back then, but I that's what was going on, because over the course of a 20-year career, I learned how to articulate. I learned how to be myself. I learned how to like come out of my shell. And I think for so many people, especially today, because there's less communication now in this form. Like there's more communication online, texting, whatever it might be, but there's less like really sitting down and talking through things and articulating what you think, what you feel, why you feel that way. And it's ironic we're having this conversation right now. Charlie Kirk passing away recently. I think about like that guy challenged a lot of people to really articulate their thoughts, because he fully talked about what he believed. And the more you talk about what you believe, the more you find holes in it, and the more you find the truth and the reality in what you're saying. And there's so much power in that. That's why I always encourage people, man, let alone a podcast is great for your personal brand, for your business, for marketing, whatever, but it helps you grow as a human being. It helps you actually listen to people and pay attention, because that is how we're actually going to make real connections with other people. And for yourself, I'm curious on that end too, the active listening, being able to listen and really connect with others. How is that impacted through guesting on podcasts?
So listening, this is a good follow-up to this. I like that you took it here. Listening kind of came more natural to me because, again, going back to my childhood, like I listened a lot. I was quiet a lot. And so I feel that maybe I had a more natural disposition to listen. I'm not saying I've always like listened and articulated and been able to like, again, return with a great conversation. But I'll tell you what, being able to listen and understand goes a really, really long way. So like, to me, even active listening is great, but I'm actively listening with intent to understand what is being said to me, which requires to kind of get out of our own shell a little bit. Because I think that so many of us, when we're listening, we're not actually listening. We're waiting for our chance to respond. There's something we heard, Rob, and we're like, "Ooh, I want to comment on that." Okay, Rob is going to keep on talking. Okay, he's almost done. Okay, now I want to go back to that, right? And I hear that so often, and I actually think it's really sad. It's a missed opportunity to keep a conversation going in a really healthy direction. And so for me, like listening, I've learned is just, that's how I learn to communicate well. It starts with me first listening and not using this newer developed skill of actually being able to communicate and speak and present well, but instead stepping back, letting go a little bit, and just following the flow of where it goes. And listen, I'll tell you what, all this, you talk about coming out of your shell, like learning to listen is coming out of the shell for a lot of people. And I think to a previous episode of your show, Rob, was very good. You had Bethany Stone on the podcast, and forgive me if I get the date wrong, but I want to call it out just in case anyone wants to go back and check it out. It was September 5th, 2025. It was the power of perspective is what y'all are talking about. And something that Bethany said is that growing is uncomfortable. Growing takes intentional effort. And I think for all of us, you're like, okay, I want to learn to communicate better. I want to learn to listen better. I want to learn to talk better. Either side of that, whichever one's more your struggle, or perhaps both, which might be most of us, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to require that you sit quieter when you're listening to someone longer than you want, or that you share a little bit deeper than you think that you want to, or that you're willing to put yourself out there, even though you might like, I might not have a complete thought, but I'm going to try it. That stuff goes a really long way. And it's a two-sided coin. You can't be, there's some people that like are public speakers that don't know how to listen. I'm like, okay, well, you're not a great communicator. You're good at talking, right? But a good communicator also understands the primary objective of that is actually to learn to listen really well and then respond in a way that actually helps move the needle forward.
Yeah, man. I hate to say a lost art form, but I think I don't think that's the right way to put it. I think it's just like we have not put emphasis on it. And I mean, we're all guilty of this. I still do it at times, where I can't wait to say something. I can't wait to, I have a good thing to say here, and learning like it doesn't matter that I have this thing to say, right? And if it's really that good, I'm going to remember it. It's going to come back up. And I think so often we feel like if I don't say this now, I'm working with a guy right now who runs a business, definitely has ADHD, and he's trying to balance out with him and his secretary, because he's allowed to step in on her at any point in time and give her information when she's not prepared, but she's not allowed to do it to him. Right. And I was like, you hate when that happens to you. He's like, yeah, I hate when she does that. I'm like, but you do it to her. And he's like, yeah, but I run the business. And I'm like, but it doesn't matter. You're teaching her. She's modeling you, right? You do it to her. She's going to do it to you. And it's also a practice in self-control. I think that's the biggest part here. Number one, you can practice your memory by remembering the thing, but the self-control and this it's this inflated self-importance. So we think I have to say this thing right now because everybody needs to hear it, because what I have to say is so important, or it's I'm going to forget it. I need to say it so I don't forget it. Both of those create bad communication. They both destroy like an active listening process. So I love that. It's so good. Before we go any further, I just want to welcome everybody here. This podcast, the Unstuck Movement, created because I want to find breakthrough. We've all been stuck at many different places in our lives. We need to find breakthrough in our lives. So I bring people on the show who have found incredible breakthrough so that we can find that for ourselves. Use these episodes as an example. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Make sure you check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Over 500 heart-centered entrepreneurs from all over the world helping each other grow. And also the Pro Podcaster Academy. So if you're somebody who wants to launch a podcast, you're not sure how to do it, I'd love to walk you through that process to make you the go-to authority in your field, make lasting impact in people's lives, and also create incredible personal and professional connections. And if you have a podcast, how do you streamline it, make it easy to execute? How do you monetize it and make it a real functional part of your business? I would love to help you with that at robzwentz.com. Alex Sanfilippo with us on the show today. Turn setbacks into stepping stones, building one of podcasting's most impactful platforms, PodMatch.com. His story inspires anyone seeking to blend passion, service, and purpose into their entrepreneurial journey. And just kind of continuing on with what we've been talking about, let's talk about the other end of podcasting, because I think the statistics now, there's well over, I think, like 4 million podcasts, but, like 90% of those podcasts never make it past 10 episodes. None really get off the ground or go anywhere. What would you say, because I'm sure you've talked to and worked with thousands of people who have podcasts, want to start them. What would you say is one of the most overlooked mistakes that podcasters make when they're starting out trying to get off the ground?
The very first mistake that's made is pretty much universally the same thing. And it's false expectations. And the expectation people have is I'm going to become the next insert famous person's name because I have a podcast, right? And the reality is that person's podcast is big because they have that name typically before they have their podcast. Mm-hmm. And so, because the most common name in podcasting is Joe Rogan. I don't mean to like inflate his numbers again, right? But like, sure, everyone's like, how can I become the next Joe Rogan? I'm like, well, first you need to have 30 years history in TV. Like I remember watching on TV when I was a kid, like Fear Factor is what I grew up watching. I loved it, right? So, go ahead and start there, right? Like, and if you're already over the age of 30 or however old he was when he started that, like you're probably too late to build up that type of legacy, becoming like an A-list celebrity. I was like, so you're out, right? Like, but the reality is some of us, we just see these big numbers. We see the top, it's actually the top 0.001%, 0.001%. And we look at that and say, I'm going to be just like that. And when it doesn't happen in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it might be, we're like, okay, well, this podcasting thing just doesn't work. And the reality is it's unmet expectations that I just call false expectations. You didn't actually sit down to think about, why am I actually doing this? What is the purpose behind it? Now, if the purpose is to get rich and famous, I'll just stop you right there. I'm not trying to be rude or mean or like a negative by any means, but that's just not the reality of what happens. There are much easier ways to become rich and famous. I don't suggest it. You need to have a real purpose, something that goes into your core, into your heart, that says, this is why I'm doing this in the first place. If you want to actually make it, that's the number one reason people stop.
Yeah, I would say too, if your goal in anything is to become rich and famous, you need to reprioritize your goals, because rich and famous should be the outcome. That's an effect of why you're doing something. And in coaching in general, podcast coaching or working with businesses, I mean, or just anything in our life, like what is the vision for what you're doing? Who are you serving? And really boil it down to like, this is something that even if I don't see the rich and famous part for 20 years, it doesn't matter, because I love doing it so much. I have such a desire to do it because I know that I'm growing. I know I'm helping other people growing. How many wins can you create by doing what you're doing and make a difference, right? Because before we started, we mentioned, I always think of this, especially whenever I lose sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing. If one person hears one little thing that I talked about or somebody else talked about at my show, and that makes an impact on them, that gives them an idea that makes them a better person, makes them a better, member of their family, helps them to serve better in their community, whatever it is, like That's the real goal. And if you keep it that simple, then that's going to build on itself, and you're going to see like compound interest from that, and that growth is going to continue to add up. So for you, what sparked you to I mean, obviously the dyslexia, getting past that, God helped you to grow through that. But when it came to podcasting, what was it initially like that made you dive into it? Did you come into it thinking you were going to be rich and famous? What was the goal?
No, that was not my goal. I'm not going to say I did everything right when I started. I actually had like I never talk about this, but here we are. So I can't say I never talk about it. I talk about it now. I had a 12 episode run at my very first go at podcasting. It was probably a few months after I listened to my first podcast, and it was just about WordPress. I was speaking at WordPress conferences at that point. So it was about WordPress. I had no vision, no goal. Just decided it sounded fun. I lasted 12 episodes and then never went back to it, never looked back. And I hope all that stuff is gone from the internet. No one can find it anywhere. But my second attempt, let's fast forward probably about a year and a half later, is when I was like, you know what? I think there is merit to this podcasting thing. Yeah, sure. I tried it. I don't know what I even tried it for, right? Like, it was just honestly just curious, which that's not a problem. But this next time I was like, there's a good reason to do this. And so my next podcast, and to probably will always be my most successful podcast from like a numbers standpoint. I had a show. It was called The Good Christian Podcast. The tagline was, we're not saying we're always good Christians, but this is always a good podcast for Christians to listen to.
I love that. That's really good.
Thanks.
You should still really do that. Actually. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Actually, that podcast still exists. There's different hosts now. It was part of a blog, and ended up moving all that to some new leadership and stuff like that. And they took the whole thing further than I ever could. So anyway, point being is, when I started that show, I knew what I could commit to, which was once a month. I did one show a month. They're about 15 to 20 minute episodes the first Monday of every month. But more importantly to that was the purpose behind it. The purpose was to dive deeper into the Word of God, specifically Jesus's life, in a way that would actually help somebody move the needle forward on one topic at each time. And so it was just kind of like very singular focus. There wasn't like, here's 30 things you can do to be more like Jesus. It was like, hey, here's one thing you can do that's going to help you. Here's how I apply it to my life. Or if I had a guest on, I'd interview them about it, kind of their experience with it. And it was really good. It was really fruitful. And I'm grateful that the people that now run that entire whole giant company now, they're doing a really great job with that. It's a really cool thing to see. But for me, getting it right started with me sitting down saying, why am I actually doing this? And what I realized, Rob, was I had so many people in my life that said they wanted to follow Jesus, but didn't actually know what that looked like. And they were opening the Bible, but they weren't fully understanding. And it was my way of, one, learning it myself better, because I was starting to teach it, right? Like, it helps a lot to do that, but also giving them an extension of like, hey, you just read this scripture. Here's what this is really saying. This is how you can apply it to your life. This is an example that looked like for me. Not that I was trying to be like the ultimate leader and guide the way. I just wanted to be one step ahead of people and help them get up to my level, to pull them to where I was. And that purpose of the podcast, I believe, is what caused it to do very, very well over a 4-year period when I was overseeing it.
Yeah, man, that's that little, who knows what nugget, what thing you dropped in there. Number one, you're serving God, so that can never go wrong. And you're teaching, right? So you learn and grow more by teaching than anything else. But who knows who got little pieces of information out of that impacted their life, that changed their life, that helped them to move forward. And I think you said something really important there too, is that it wasn't necessarily, because sometimes we can, especially people, I always hear this from people who are humble. They say, I don't want to brag, but I don't want to seem like I'm not, you know what I mean? If you're humble, if you're not humble, you don't say stuff like that. When you are humble, you think like, oh, I don't want to seem like I'm the expert, or I don't want to tell people what to do because I don't want to come across a certain way. It's like, no, you're called to go do that. If you're really skilled at something, you're really passionate about something. Number one, if you don't know a lot about the thing, but you're passionate about it, then bring guests on who know a lot about it and you can interview them. If you do know a lot about it, then you can talk about it. You can still have guests on too, but you should share that information. I always think of the win-wins. Like it helps you grow. You bring guests on, it helps lift them up. Now you're exposed to each other's platforms and people are listening. Everybody wins from it. So why not approach it that way? But I'm curious too about the faith end of it, because I think oftentimes when we feel like we're guided by God to go do things in our life, we want to, at least this is my experience, I don't want to talk about it until I know I've got it right. because I don't want to steer anybody in the wrong direction. And I take that much more seriously than if I came on here and talked leadership, or, if I talked radio, or if I talked podcasting. I can just talk about that and not worry as much about what I'm saying, because it's not as heavy, in my opinion. What about you when you were on there trying to be a good Christian, talking about being a good Christian? Was there a certain weight to that? Because that can be a real roadblock for people in sharing.
Rob, first off, just selfishly, this feels good to hear you say that, because for me, like the most terrifying form of speaking that I still don't really do is speak at church. I mean, it's eternity versus just like maybe a bad direction someone can change, right? Like, I'm like, it's terrifying. Like, I feel like you're playing with people's souls a little bit. So like, yeah. it can be scary. When I was doing the podcast, I really, that one specifically, I was very big on reminding people, like, I was a student myself. I was on the journey. This is what I have figured out thus far. And to this day, I still show up that way in pretty much everything I talk about, aside from maybe a few podcasting things that are like, hey, there's no discussion here. This is, this is what you've got to do, right? But beyond that, just showing up in a way that was like, hey, you're going on this journey with me. I'm learning it myself. And I'll be real, sometimes I got it wrong. And sometimes I heard from listeners when I got it wrong. And I actually just use that as a teaching moment for myself. And so it would end up always turning into great dialogue. And sometimes even me correcting something of my own, saying, hey, I actually realized I made a mistake here. And so again, like, I don't want to do that from stage at a church. So that terrifies me, Rob. But on a podcast, again, being able to have that interaction is great. The problem comes into play that is if we feel, and this is a trap that a lot of people fall into. So I think this is key here for anyone who's like, oh, I'm going to be a podcaster. I am a podcaster. Don't fall in the trap that you need to be the person who has all the right answers all the time. I think that is so dangerous when you let people feel that, like, you want to have this persona that, like, I'm the authority, I know it all. And you kind of like just work that into what you do. You want people to feel like, oh man, this guy knows everything, right? Like, no, you don't want to be that guy. As a matter of fact, people don't really resonate with that person as much as maybe we have in the past now, right? Like, we've got tools that now know everything. We don't want a person that knows everything. We want a person that's humbly sharing their perspective and learning in real time while we're learning as well, because it feels like a very human type of situation to be in, whether it's just you listening to a podcast, right? And so I encourage everybody, like, think about that. You don't want to be the person with all the answers. You don't need to sound like the leading authority. You want to be the number one student of your own podcast, of your own topic. And when people see that, they really grab onto it. And I think that that's something that can cause you to go much, much further when it comes to engaging your audience.
It's a great point. And that builds that relationship, that builds that connection with people, because they're like, oh, this is just another person on a journey learning about this thing and growing. And that in itself brings people to you. That in itself creates that connection that you're looking for, that you want to have. That's why we have friends in our lives, people we look up to, even mentors, even because mentors don't have it all figured out. They're still learning, but they might be ahead of you in the game, but you can learn from them, but they're still growing and learning themselves. And I think it's important to also say that out loud, to tell people that, and to make that something that's known. So we're going to take a break real fast. But when I come back, I want to switch gears into PodMatch, because I'm curious about where this is heading. I love talking about vision, and you've built something that a lot of people consider to be, including myself, like the best platform for finding great guests, a great community of podcasters, people who want to grow together. So before we go to the break, how many people have been on PodMatch who have used that platform for podcasting? Do you have a roundabout number?
Oh man, this is not an exact number. I'm sure I'm off by thousands, but I'm going to say 62,000.
Wow.
I'll look at while we're on break, I will look at my analytics, because I don't look at that very much, but I'll say 62,000 and I'll see how close I was.
Okay. The reason is I wanted to frame that because if you don't know about PodMatch, lots of people use it in podcasting, and I'm curious the vision you have to grow it to where it is, and then where you want to take it. We'll talk about that in 1 minute when we come back. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
Alex, loving this conversation, man. It's so good. And just jumping into PodMatch, your vision at the beginning when you put this thing together and your vision now, how has that changed over time?
Real quick, I got to correct myself on something I said previously. I was way off my number. It's at time of recording this right now, time we're live, 77,378 people. So wow. I was a bit off. But I've never been a metrics guy. Now I'll go into answering your question. From day one, I was just not a metrics guy. I came from a corporate background. I did 15 years in big corporate. KPIs, key performance indicators, I lived by them. That was the blood that went through my veins, right? So I just I was on the C-suite of a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded aerospace company. We're parts manufacturer. So for me, charts, graphs, numbers, it's all I looked at. And I just knew that when I became an entrepreneur, I didn't want to slip back into that because it can be dangerous. And that business is good. You probably need it. Airplanes need to stay in the sky, right? They shouldn't fall out of the sky, especially with people on them. In my business, though, I was like, you know what? I want to focus more on the people. Podcasting is already about conversation. It's already about bringing people together. I want to stay focused on that side. Now, yes, we do have analytics. I do look at them on a scheduled basis to make sure there's nothing wrong, but I don't really dive into them like maybe a lot of people do. And so when I got started, I knew I wanted it to be different. I wanted to build a human-first business. And I think that's really unheard of in the software space. But I knew that it was something that was needed. So yes, I started to solve a problem, and I'll quickly share that problem, Rob. Basically, PodMatch in a nutshell, it's a service that connects podcast guests and podcast hosts for interviews. The way I kind of describe it is it works similar to a dating app, although I've been married too long to use a dating app, but it works similar to how you kind of like swipe right, like on somebody you'd want to meet and stuff like that, right? Works like that, but instead of connecting them for dates, it connects them for podcast interviews. So it brings a host and a guest together. It's how Rob and I got connected for this interview, actually. Had our conversation on PodMatch, scheduled it from right there, and boom, here we are. And so I knew that was the problem I wanted to solve. How I wanted to solve it, I just wanted to do something different that I hadn't seen before. And this type of software didn't exist at that point. There was really not an option like this. But I still knew, okay, just because it's a different type of software doesn't mean it needs to be run like all the rest. And so from day one, my goal was, can we help really build a business that people feel like there's a culture behind? That anyone who joins it can tell, this is different. And still to this day, man, we hear... every day we get emails, people being like, there's something really different about how you guys are doing things. The fact that people are like, how am I talking to the founder of this company? That makes no sense. Aren't you guys huge? Yes, but we've built everything around being able to communicate well. So yes, the vision has changed a little bit since we started for sure, Rob, but in all, it's the same mission we're after. And the way that we're accomplishing it is still the same, with a human first mindset involved in the entire process from start to finish.
I love that. And, it shows up too, because I've out of my 200 and I think you're episode 281, I probably have had, I'm going to say close to 80 PodMatch guests at this point. Probably, I would think it's somewhere along that line. I've met some of the best people. I've met people that I still talk to off the podcast. This is all virtual, but we communicate online on a semi-regular basis because I've made real connections and met amazing humans. And I think that it speaks to the platform itself, because you can feel the humanness of it. And when I have conversations with people, I'm like, they're not on here just selling things. Sometimes that happens. I'm not saying that doesn't always happen, but
of course,
rarely. Usually it is people who really want to share their story, and they're looking for that human connection. And I think that's everything, man. Especially when you're doing it virtually, because I podcasting in person, I live in a a semi-small town in the middle of Pennsylvania near Penn State University. I'm not flying people in. I'm not flying out to do podcasts. Maybe someday that becomes a reality. That would be amazing. But right now, virtually is the way to do it. And it has been incredible, the connections and the relationships built just from finding people on the platform. So, right, there's so many podcasts out there. The numbers are very high. The success rate's very low. But I also believe, too, small podcasts can create a big impact. And I wanted to ask you that. Somebody who has a small podcast, they don't intend on it ever becoming this global giant, but they still want to make a big impact with it. How do they do that? What does that look like?
It starts first and foremost with going back to your vision, right? Like, why are you doing this? Who are you serving? Like, you got to know that stuff before you get started. But once you get started and you've really determined who this thing is going to be for, who your show's going to be for, you want to get really, really narrow. You want to get really, really focused on that. You want to only speak to that niche, that one vertical, just that one little piece of what you talk about. There was recently, Rob, a podcast that a friend of mine was producing, and it was doing exceptionally well. And I was like, this is your most popular show now. What's it about? It is a dog specifically for Golden Doodle owners that want to learn how to better groom their Golden Doodle. Not anything other than that. That's all I talk about is grooming your Golden Doodle. And I was like, wow. I'm like, what are the numbers again? And they are like unbelievable. I'm like, that's like 10 times the size of my podcast, like.
How many episodes could you have on that? Like, how far could that go?
I don't know. I've never listened to it. I don't have a Golden Doodle, so it didn't interest me. But here's the thing. That's perfect. It didn't interest me. Therefore, there was none of this like, maybe I'm interested. I didn't turn into a lurker. I could look at the title of this show, read the description in under 10 seconds and decide, nope, not for me. But I'll tell you what, the opposite is true. A Golden Doodle owner that feels like their dog smells bad all the time is probably like, thank you. I need this. Subscribing now. I'm not going to listen first. I'm just going to jump straight into subscribing because I know I need it. They created the only podcast for that. And so many of us, we don't want to like, quote unquote, sell ourselves short or get too small of a piece of the pie. I don't think we live in a world where that's a thing anymore. I mean, search engines already connect us enough. Social media already connects us enough. Now, like AI is connecting us even faster, even closer, even more narrow niche. You're going to be found if you're doing something and you're the only person doing it. Everyone else in the world who's interested in it can easily find you. And I'm not promising you big numbers. What I am promising you is big impact if you really, really stand for something. And I think it takes a lot more courage to have a podcast that's truly for somebody and for something and stands up for that than to have a big, broad podcast that's for everybody on the planet because it's a podcast for humans, right? Like it's got to get really specific. So I tell people from day one, like how you can know if it's having an impact is you have anybody listening to a really, really specific podcast. Example, my podcast these days, Rob, is about podcasting. It's called Podcasting Made Simple. I think it's pretty clear what it's about, right? Like that's the whole idea behind it. It's not a big show. And people are always like, hey, do you want to grow it more? I'm like, no, because there's not too many podcasters who would be interested in this. Like, what do you mean you don't want to grow it? I'm like, no, I'm already reaching the people that I know this is for. It's a few thousand people a week. That is great. That is really good for me given the size of my business, right? Like this is a good ratio. I'm very, very happy with where it is right now. And I know that it serves. I know it shows up because we always stay on focus. I don't have episodes that are about something else, right? We always keep it really narrow. And yes, you repeat yourself a little bit, but if there's one thing I've learned is if it's important, you repeat it. And I've learned that time and time again in business. Like when I'm hosting a meeting, I've got to repeat the important stuff. Like every time it comes up until people are like, okay, I think I'm finally getting it, right? And so I think that really, if you want to succeed in podcasting, you've got to have something that you really stand for and put that on display for everyone to see and everyone to know.
Yeah, great point. And, what are cliches? Something's a cliche because it's been repeated a billion times. And we think of cliches as a negative, but actually it's like, no, if something becomes a cliche, it's because it's true and it's been repeated over and over again throughout history because it stands the test of time. And that's a great point too, because oftentimes this will happen to me where I'm like, man, I've already talked about this. I get annoyed with talking about the same thing over and over again. And I'm thinking somebody else is getting annoyed by it. But no, that's not true. Anything that you really want to have stick, you need to hear it. I mean, psychology says, like, even in advertising, you need to see somebody or see an ad between 6 and 20 times before it even starts to like necessarily resonate with you, before it starts to stay with you, and for it to become like a habit, right? That's habits start 90 to 120 days, 6 months. It might become something that is pretty stable in your life a year until it's like, man, this is a new version of me. I've added this into my repertoire. So thinking about that, it's like you need to hear the same things over and over and over again. I've had to remind myself of that many times. And actually with this show, what I do is I build themes. So I listen for themes that come up over and over and over again. And then I have a list. I can look at it right now in front of me while we're talking, because I jot them down as I'm going through episodes, up to 92 themes that show up on a repeated basis on the show. And so think about, and this is the next direction I wanted to go in, the monetization of podcasts, because there's many different ways to monetize. Like right now I'm thinking, virtual conferences, you can turn it into a book. There's so many different things you can do with it, aside from just having the podcast, getting sponsors and things like that. But I have the Pro Podcaster Academy, right? So I've helped people launch their platforms. And a lot of the times out here, I don't want to monetize it because it's going to take the fun out of it. It's going to ruin it for me. What are your thoughts on somebody who has a platform? Should they monetize it? Should they not? What are the benefits? What are the deterrents? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I first and foremost think there's like pillars of this. I kind of try to think of a podcast monetization strategy like a business, like a brick and mortar business monetization strategy. The very first goal that you have when you start your business is not to make $1 million. The very first goal is to be able to keep the lights on, to pay your staff, to pay for all the administrative stuff, right? And I think that in podcasting, we need to view it that way as well. That like, no, we're not trying to monetize to get rich and famous, right? Like, or to make more money than we're making in our day job right now. Like if that is the goal. Right now, we're trying to say, hey, I've got $87 a month in production cost. How can I make $87 with this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I like people to start there is because that is much more realistic than saying, how do I make $80,000 a year with my show? Those are two very, very different problems. But I'm telling you, if you can't offset the $87 a month, you're not going to be able to make $80,000 a year with your podcast. We've got to get that perspective right first and foremost. And that to me is that first pillar. And so there are many ways to do that. Sure, ads are a great way. Having a sponsor, having just a way to donate sometimes goes extremely well, especially if you have like a purpose-driven type of podcast. Again, really narrow in a niche. There are people that probably feel that you are the only voice that's speaking to them. Mm-hmm. Even if you're repeating yourself, right? They're learning it. They're not feeling it like it's repetitive. They're learning it. They'd probably love to give you a little bit of money to help offset. Those are some really great ways to do that. If you are using PodMatch, we have what we call our Pod Value Initiative. We literally pay podcast hosts just for using PodMatch.
Dude, that blew me away. The first time I got paid through PodMatch, I was like, why are they sending me money? Because I didn't even pay attention to know that was a thing. So I started getting paid. I'm like, what is this? Like, that's
man, I actually, that's my favorite type of response right there versus where's my money, right? Like, whoa, what is this? I like that. And listen, no one's going to get rich using PodMatch. It's just not going to happen, but it can lead to helping offset your production costs. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to get that out of the way, but I do think that my favorite monetization strategy, I think works really well, which is to find out what your listeners are struggling with. This does two things for you. One, it tells you what content you should repeat or what you should talk about. When you're talking to your listeners, finding out what are you struggling with, you now know what your future content looks like. Because if they're all saying, hey, I'm really struggling with understanding how to lead in my family. I've got the work situation down, but I'm trying to come home and lead the same way. How do I build that balance? Like, what's the difference? If everyone Rob talks to says that same thing, he now knows I need an episode about this. Mm-hmm. But also, there's probably a product or service in there. Is there a course? Is there a mastermind? Is there some sort of book that he could develop that he can offer to those individuals? When you talk to people that listen, the people that you ultimately serve, and you ask them, what is it that you are struggling with? That is where opportunity exists. Now, talking to your listeners it can be simple, can be complex. The easiest way to do is if you have a podcast, mention on the podcast, hey, I'd love the opportunity to chat with you. Text me through my Google Voice number, maybe not your real phone number, right? Or like email me or go to this website or however you want to. And anyone who's engaging anywhere, engage back with them saying, hey, do you have a few minutes? I'd love to chat with you. Get on a virtual call and just see what it is that they're struggling with. Ask them that question. Now, this is a long, kind of like a longer solution, right? It doesn't happen overnight, but also keep it simple. If people want to start meeting with other people and they're willing to pay $100 a month for it, don't go try to create the next Zoom. Use Zoom, right? Use Slack if they just want a chat room together, paying a few dollars a month for it. Then yes, use something that exists already. You want to offer the fastest possible solution to the simple problem that you hear people struggling with. And I'm telling you, that in my mind is like the best way to monetize. And Rob, I think you've modeled that really well. Like I listen, I'm a podcast, I listen to your show. And as a listener, I know that the things that you offer with this show are very well aligned to the people that are listening to it. you've either talked to them or you've done this long enough. Somehow you figure that out. But that's the key, more than I'd say anything else.
Well, for me, it's just like, this is what I care about. These are the places where I've struggled. So I need to, I mean, it's as simple as what's your lane? What's your, who's your audience? Well, it's me. It's like the older version of me. That's how I've always kind of looked at my businesses. Like, who was I 5 or 10 years ago? What would I have needed to get where I am? And then speak towards those things. And so there's so many different ideas that I could implement that I will at some point in time, but it's like, that's how I've always kind of pictured, how do I decide? Because that's one of my hardest things, like making a decision and then just like executing on it. It's like, well, I can decide when I know this was something that I struggled with. I got through it. It's make your mess your message, turn your baggage into luggage. I talk about it all the time because when you get through a thing, now you can help other people with it. Where else do you have a higher level of expertise than something you struggled in a lot and then got through? You like know that thing really, really well because you spent time struggling in it and getting through it. And so that to me is like, it's just kind of, it's common sense. Like that's where the direction you should head in. So we're coming to the end of this. I did want to ask one more question when it regards faith, spiritual principles. What spiritual principles influence how you run your business, how you run this platform?
It's actually one of my my personal core values, which is to love first. And it might be obvious to anyone who's following Jesus or reads the Bible or anything like that, but like Jesus's goal was to love first and to not to be served, but to serve. And those two things for me go really hand in hand. And I'll just quickly share this story. When I first started PodMatch, the first 3 years, I got this really wrong. I was so focused on serving people that I actually forgot to love them. And when I was serving and you serve too much, it causes stress. It causes anxiety. I was like, I got to serve these people better. People were still like quitting podcasting. It was weight that I didn't need to put on my shoulders, but I was putting it there because I was so focused on serving. One day, my wife walks into my office. I'm stressed beyond belief. So I'm like, what are you doing in here? You know, like I didn't even ask, but she just like walks in, but like, I'm busy. And by the way, she's a co-founder in PodMatch and she's a lot smarter than I am. So a lot of the congratulations of our success goes to her. But she walked in, she goes, you know, Alex, like you're always focused on serving people. She goes, but sometimes it's important to remember that the most important thing is actually loving them first. And man, I like still makes me like want to cry thinking about it. But like I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. I try to play it cool. But then next thing you know, I'm singing in the corner.
All right,
like,
cool. Get out.
And like, legitimately just sitting there crying, like remembering, I was like, man, she's so right. I focused on too much on my performance and how I was serving, looking at, again, metrics, like that mindset versus just remembering at the end of the day, I might get to talk to 5 or 6 of these people, but I got to show them some love. I got to be able to love them. And so at the core of what we do, it's a reminder that we, first and foremost, we love people like Jesus, not for what they do, not for who they are, or not for what they do, but for who they are. They're simply another created being that we just want to do our best to brighten their day however we can. And we're going to let that shine through the way that we run our software in a really human way. And that's a key core value of what we have.
It stands out, man. When I got that first PayPal payment, I was like, wow, this platform actually cares about me. This is weird. Why are they paying me? What's happening here? That is so foreign that I thought something was wrong. I was like, they screwed up. Why are they sending me money? So it's like that, and that's shocking to people, but like in the best way possible, because it is the best surprise. Like this platform actually cares about me. Like, why would I ever leave a platform that's actually, and like I pay them? It's all reciprocal. I pay them, they pay me. I meet incredible people. They bring more people to the platform. It's just like, what a great model, man. That's the kind of model that lasts and makes an impact, that loves people. Yeah, I want to encourage everybody as we're wrapping this thing up to make sure you go to podmatch.com/free. If you've never checked out PodMatch for yourself, what can they expect when they go to that link?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. podmatch.com/free will just give you 9 ideas for being a podcast guest or being a podcast host. And if you're already one, there's some ideas there as well that will help you if you're kind of just wanting to further your journey. But if you're brand new, it's a great place to start as well. So that's podmatch.com/free. 9 quick ideas I think would be really helpful. And it doesn't ask for your email address or anything like that. Just, again, a way to serve, a way to help. And I hope it really is meaningful for everybody.
Very cool. The question I love to ask, Alex, before we sign off, say we never talk again, say anybody watching or listening never hears from you again, and you wanted to leave a lasting message for them in their life, what would that message be?
It'd be to view the word focus as an acronym. So the word focus is an acronym, which stands for follow one course until successful. Follow one course until successful. I think one of the biggest issues that we face in the world today and in business and in life is this idea of chronic inconsistency. We don't remain consistent. We don't remain the course long enough to actually see things happen. And I believe it's just maybe the world we live in where we see so many highlights that we feel like things should happen quick. They should happen fast. There should be no friction involved. But the reality is there's going to be friction. There's going to be some pain, because if there wasn't, everyone would already be doing exactly what you're thinking about doing. So instead of giving into that, follow one course until successful. Stay focused longer than you think you should. And I believe that you're going to come on the other side with a reward that no one else is able to achieve.
I love that, man. Like I said, I'm always looking for themes. There's the theme. Focus, follow one course until successful. That is so good. Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for being a brother in Christ. I appreciate that, Alex, and I appreciate you being on the show today. Another true testimony of breakthrough. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.